first grade. I loved seeing all your smiling faces at the parade on Saturday. It was so good to see you. I miss you guys so much. It's a beautiful morning, and so I got my cup of hot tea, so maybe you can get hot tea or hot cocoa or something. Get all comfy and cozy because it's time for Read Aloud. Today's book is called Mike Mulligan and His Steam Shovel. So boys, gather around. I think this is the book for you. Alright, our story is by, the pictures and the story are by Virginia Lee Burton. So she not only was the author of the book, she was also the illustrator of the book. And here's our front cover. Go ahead and take a second to guess what the story might be about. Awesome. I'm excited to find out what happens next. Briefly before we get started, this is a little diagram that shows exactly what the steam shovel does in its different parts. Okay, so we have the smokestack up here is kind of like the chimney. The cab is where the person sits. The coal burners, this is where they put coal in to burn to make the machine move. The turntable, so this cab rotates around on top of these wheels so he can turn it to move the scoop shovel without going backwards or forward. The caterpillars are the wheels. The hosting operator is Mike Mulligan, so that's him right there. The boom is this long arm right here. The teeth are the pointy things on the little bucket. The bucket itself is called a dipper, and the tongue is the bottom of the bucket, so it moves like a mouth. Mm-hmm. The dipper stick is the stick that runs sideways. The trip line is this line that comes right here to help it to stop if something goes wrong. The crowd lever, the lever that moves it up and down. The hoist lever, which hoists things out of the bucket. And the swing lever, which swings the arm back and forth. So just to kind of give you a background on how it works. Mike Mulligan had a steam shovel, a beautiful red steam shovel. Her name was Mary Ann. Mike Mulligan was very proud of Mary Ann. He always said that she could dig as much in a day as 100 men could dig in a week. But he had never been quite sure that this was true. So Mary Ann is the name of his steam shovel. Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann had been digging together for years and years. Mike Mulligan took such good care of Mary Ann, she never grew old. It was Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann and some others who dug the great canals for the big boats to sail through. So, what they did was, if you look at the first picture, they're digging out the land to make a little canal, which is almost like a little canyon for the water to flow through so boats can just come across the land so it doesn't take as long to go around. So this is what it looks like afterwards. It was Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann and some others who cut through the high mountains so that trains could get through. So they made paths for trains in the mountains. It was Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann and some others who lowered the hills and straightened the curve to make the long highways for the automobiles. It was Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann and some others who smoothed out the ground and filled in the holes to make the landing fields for the airplanes. And it was Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann and some others who dug the deep holes for the cellars of the tall skyscrapers in the big cities. When people used to stop and watch them, Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann used to dig a little faster and a little better. The more people stopped, the faster and better they dug. Some days they would keep as many as 37 trucks busy taking away the dirt that they had dug. So remember how we talked when you make a skyscraper? They go underground quite a ways to make them strong so that they don't sway. So they're digging a deep hole for it. Then along came the new gasoline shovels, and the new electric shovels, and the new diesel motor shovels, and took all the jobs away from the steam shovels. Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann were very sad. They got new and better steam shovels, which replaced Mary Ann. All the other steam shovels were being sold for junk, or left out in the gravel pits to rust and fall apart. Mike loved Mary Ann. He couldn't do that to her. He had taken such good care of her that she could still dig as much in a day as 100 men could dig in a week. At least he thought she could, but he wasn't quite sure. Everywhere they went, the new gas shovels and the new electric shovels and the new diesel motor shovels had all the jobs. No one wanted Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann anymore. Then one day, Mike read in a newspaper that the town of Popperville was going to build a new town hall. "We are going to dig the cellar of that town hall," said Mike to Mary Ann, and then off they started. They left to the canals and the railroads and the highways and the airports and the big cities where no one wanted them anymore, and went away into the country. They crawled along slowly up the hills and down the hills till they came to the little town of Popperville. When they got there, they found that the select men were just deciding who should dig the cellar for the new town hall. Mike Mulligan spoke to Henry B. Swap, one of the select men. "I heard," he said, "that you are going to build a new town hall. Mary Ann and I will dig this cellar for you in just one day." "What?" said Henry W. Swap. "Dig a cellar in a day? It would take 100 men at least a week to dig the cellar for our new town hall." "Sure," said Mike, "but Mary Ann can dig as much in a day as 100 men can dig in a week." Though he had never been quite sure that this was true. Then he added, "If we can't do it, you won't have to pay." Henry B. Swap thought that this would be an easy way to get part of the cellar dug for nothing. So he smiled in rather a mean way and gave the job of digging the cellar of the new town hall to Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann. So do you think that do you think that Henry W. Swap believed that they could do it? I don't think so either. I think he just took the bet because he thought he would win, and then they couldn't do it. They started in early the next morning, just as the sun was coming up. Soon a little boy came along. "Do you think you will finish by sundown?" he said to Mike Mulligan. "Sure," said Mike. "If you stay and watch us, we will always work faster and better when someone is watching us." So the little boy stayed to watch. Then Mrs. McGillicuddy, Henry B. Swap, and the town constable came over to see what was happening, and they stayed to watch. Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dug a little faster and a little better. This gave the little boy a good idea. He ran off and told the postman with the morning mail, the telegraph boy on his bicycle, the milkman with his cart and horse, the doctor on his way home, and the farmer and his family coming into town for the day, and they all stopped and stayed to watch. That made Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dig a little faster and a little better. They finished the first corner neat and square, but the sun was getting higher. Cling, cling! The fire department arrived. They had seen the smoke and thought there was a fire. Then the little boy said, "Why don't you stay and watch?" So the fire department of Popperville stayed to watch Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann. When they heard the fire engine, the children in the school across the street couldn't keep their eyes on their lessons. The teacher called a long recess and the whole school came out to watch. That made Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dig still faster and still better. They finished the second corner neat and square, but the sun was right up on the top of the sky. Do you think they're finished? Let's find out. Now, the girl who answers the telephone called up the next towns of Bangerville and Bopperville and Kipperville and Copperville and told them what was happening in Popperville. All the people came over to see it, if Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel could dig the cellar in just one day. The more people came, the faster Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dug. But they would have to hurry. They were only halfway through and the sun was beginning to go down. They finished the third corner neat and square. That's a lot of people. Never had Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann had so many people to watch them. Never had they dug so fast and so well, and never had the sun seemed to go down so fast. "Hurry, Mike Mulligan, hurry, hurry," shouted the little boy. There's not much time. Dirt was flying everywhere, and the smoke and steam were so thick that people could hardly see anything but listen. Bang, bang, crash, slam, louder and louder, faster and faster. Then suddenly it was quiet. Slowly the dirt settled down, the smoke and steam cleared away, and there was the cellar, all finished. 4 corners, neat and square, 4 walls straight down, and Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann at the bottom, and the sun was just going down behind the hill. "Hooray!" shouted the people. "Hooray for Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel. They have dug the cellar in just one day." Suddenly the little boy said, "How are they going to get out?" "That's right," said Mr. McGillicuddy to Henry B. Swap. "How is he going to get his steam shovel out?" Henry B. Swap didn't answer, but he smiled in rather a mean way. Then everybody said, "How are they going to get out?" "Hi, Mike McGilligan, how are you going to get out, your steam shovel out?" Mike McGilligan looked around at the 4 square walls and 4 square corners, and he said, "We've dug so fast and we've dug so well that we've quite forgotten to leave a way out." Nothing like this has ever happened to Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann before, and they didn't know what to do. Nothing like this had ever happened before in Popperville. Everybody started talking at once, and everybody had a different idea, and everybody thought that his idea was the best. They talked and they argued and they fought, till they were worn out, and still no one knew how to get Mike McGilligan and Mary Ann out of the cellar they had dug. Then Henry B. Swap said, "The job isn't finished because Mary Ann isn't out of the cellar, so Mike McGilligan won't get paid," and he smiled again in rather a mean way. Now the little boy, who had been keeping very quiet, had another good idea, and he said, "Why couldn't we leave Mary Ann in the cellar and build a new town hall above her? Let her be the furnace for the new town hall, and let Mike McGilligan be the janitor. Then you wouldn't have to buy a new furnace, and we could pay Mike McGilligan for digging the cellar in just one day." "Why not?" said Henry B. Swap, and smiled in a way that was not quite so mean. "Why not?" said Mr. McGillicuddy. "Why not?" said the town constable. "Why not?" said all the people. So they found a ladder and they climbed down into the cellar to ask Mike McGilligan and Mary Ann. "Why not?" said Mike McGilligan. So it was decided, and everybody was happy. They built the new town hall right over Mike McGilligan and Mary Ann, and it was finished before winter. Every day the little boy goes over to see Mike McGilligan and Mary Ann, and Mr. McGillicuddy takes him nice hot apple pies. As for Henry B. Swap, he spends most of his time in the cellar of the new town hall, listening to the stories that Mike McGilligan has to tell, and smiling in a way that isn't mean at all. Now, when you go to Popperville, be sure to go down in the cellar of the new town hall. There'll be Mike McGilligan and Mary Ann, Mike in his rocking chair, smoking his pipe, and Mary Ann beside him, warming up the meetings in the new town hall. what did you think of the story? I thought it was a really good book too. Why do you think the one guy who's not smiling so mean changed? How did he change at the end of the story? Yeah, his smile was not so mean, and suddenly he thought it was a good idea. So, how did Mike McGolligan and Marianne help with that? They continued to stay nice to him, and they showed him that he was wrong and that they could be used for something good, and they weren't just a waste of time. So, in the end, everybody was happy, but they also learned something that day. Don't judge a book by its cover, which means don't just think that it can't happen just because. Maybe you need to give it a chance first.